Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda.
Hare Krishna. Welcome to Bhagavad-gita. Here it is. We called our channel because here it is. Bhagavad-gita as it is. Commentary and translation. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And my name is Labanga Latika. We are nearing the end of the third chapter, Karma Yoga, which refers to activities. And yoga, of course, the whole concept of yoga means connecting to the Supreme. So the Vedas describe different forms of yoga, and here Krishna is focusing on one aspect at a time, and within one aspect on the many aspects of that aspect, because this is not just entertainment. This is meant for practical use. So if you take up a process in life, of course, first we have the second chapter where we understand why we want to take this up, because we are spirit soul in the material world, a rather foreign condition for us, but we have forgotten that. So we get to know about the spirit soul, we get an impetus to practice yoga, connecting to the Supreme. And now it's a little bit about how to do it, and also while we hear about how to do it, more questions come up, and Krishna will reply to them. And today we are reading text 42. And that is following on. Arjuna had a question regarding activities. Sometimes we do activities against our own best self-interest, against our own best intelligence, yet it's like we are forced to do them. And Arjuna is asking why. And Krishna comes back. We were reading previous installment if you're following here. Otherwise, of course, you have your own Bhagavad-gita, so you can easily read it. So Krishna is speaking about lust, which is kind of, in a modern Western sense, it's not a concept we discuss a lot because we don't see how it's part of our life except in some specific areas. But lust, desire, this drive to enjoy separate from Krishna, it's intimately connected with the whole reason we are staying in this material world. And it is very good to understand it in a practical sense. So we spoke about that. How that lust is covering us, our real intelligence, our real identity, and how the senses, mind, and intelligence, that's where we mostly find it. So this verse comes after this discussion, so it's not just hanging in the air. I will read the Sanskrit. Indriyani paranyahur indriyebhya parang manaha manasastu para buddhir yo buddhe paratastu saha. The working senses are superior to the dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And he, the soul, is even higher than intelligence. So the previous verse was saying this lust is situated in the senses, mind, and intelligence. So that's how we came to this point. Purport. The senses are different outlets for the activities of lust. Lust is reserved within the body, but it is given vent through the senses. Therefore, the senses are superior to the body as a whole. These outlets are not in use when there is superior consciousness or Krishna consciousness. In Krishna consciousness, the soul makes direct connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the hierarchy of bodily functions, as described here, ultimately ends in the Supreme Soul. Bodily action means the functions of the senses, and stopping the senses means stopping all bodily actions. But since the mind is active, even though the body may be silent and at rest, the mind will act as it does during dreaming. But above the mind is the determination of the intelligence, and above the intelligence is the soul proper. So we see this in reality, how the senses are always drawing us, how we're always engaging in the senses in different ways. But when the senses are silent, the mind goes on. Some people have that experience. They try some yoga retreat for a weekend and they're supposed to sit down and meditate on nothing, which we don't recommend. We recommend meditation on something, but even that is difficult, but at least it's possible. And then when you try to not think of things, they inevitably pop up and you're drawn here and there and you remember old things and you're a little hungry and you wonder when can you do the next thing and so on. Because even when the senses are not directly active, the mind is still that connecting function between us and the senses. The senses have some demands and the mind remembers them and brings them up to us. The person, because the senses, they don't have a will on their own, of course, but the impulses come from the senses. And then we hear of the determination of the intelligence. Determination of the intelligence. So the intelligence determines, yes, this is a good thing and this is a bad thing. We will do this, we won't do that. And sometimes it seems to be a little bit of a battle between the mind and the intelligence, because the mind is like, let's do something, let's do this, let's do that. And the intelligence is saying, yeah, but we don't have time because we have to go to work, or this isn't good for us because when we're sick we shouldn't eat that thing. So ultimately the soul, the person, I have to decide myself. But these lower instances that are part of my material, the material compound of the body and the gross body and the subtle body, are very much what I identify with in this world. And therefore, understanding these different aspects of the body, of the mind and senses intelligence is not complete, because unless we understand the soul, we can go on juggling what's good and what's bad. And we see that in popular discourse. You have different fractions. They're not really fractions as such, they're not fighting each other, but you can see the health segment that says you have to exercise 85 hours a week at least, and you can only eat that and not that, and they can't agree. Some people say this is a healthy thing, and some says that's the worst, let's never eat that, let's eat this instead. And they become so absorbed in this because somehow or another the intelligence makes the distinction. This is good and that is bad, and it demands of us to follow it. And depending on our identification, we will think, yes, let's follow that, but actually I don't want to. I want to sleep in and eat ice cream. Because that's the demand of my senses. And this is going on because you will always have that different groups. Some groups are saying the most important thing is education, so we can better ourselves and have a better ability to make decisions and create a good society, or at least a good position for ourselves. And there are so many aspects that somebody will think it's the most important, and they can never agree because they have different intelligence, different senses, different desires. So therefore, when we come to the soul, which is the actual identity, which is actually me, then we can finally figure out where to put our priorities. What is the most important? So above the mind is the determination of the intelligence. Above the intelligence is the soul proper. If therefore the soul is directly engaged with the supreme, naturally all other subordinates, namely the intelligence, mind and senses, will be automatically engaged. So they will not disappear. But the priorities will be set. The intelligence will bring the mind in, the mind will bring the senses in, and there will be engagement, and there will be a level of satisfaction that is sufficient for all the levels because it comes from the highest level. In the Katha Upanishad there is a similar passage in which it is said that the objects of sense gratification are superior to the senses, and mind is superior to the sense objects. If therefore the mind is directly engaged in the service of the Lord constantly, then there is no chance that the senses will become engaged in other ways. This mental attitude has already been explained. Parang drishtva nivartate. If the mind is engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is no chance of it being engaged in the lower propensities. In the Katha Upanishad, the soul has been described as Mahan, the great. Therefore the soul is above all, namely the sense objects, the senses, the mind and the intelligence. Therefore directly understanding the constitutional position of the soul is the solution to the whole problem. So many will say, there is no problem. There is no problem. I will sit in my sofa, I will watch a movie, I will eat chocolate, and this whole higher and lower nature, I'm not interested. I'm just going to do what I'm doing. And of course you can do what you're doing. Krishna is not exactly going to reach out of the Bhagavad-gita and stop you. But when we come to a point with our own experience where we feel this is not enough. I have watched all the movies. I have read all the books. I haven't said it's about the movies, but when I was young, I read a lot of books. And at one point, I said to a friend, I think I'm getting tired of reading books because they're all the same. They have a beginning, and then they have a story, and then they have an end. So it's so predictable. It's not really enjoyable anymore. My friend looked at me because it was a very strange thing to say, because they all have different stories. Yes, and we can eat all different foods, and we can travel and see different places, and we can listen to different music from all over the world, old and new. But it's still a question of the senses engaging with the sense object, and the soul proper is not really satisfied with that. So that's the thing. We're not making a moral judgment and saying everybody has to do like we do because we are the religion and religion is good. No, this is an analytical understanding of how we function. There is sense enjoyment, there is mental activities, there is intelligence, but unless it's all anchored in a realization of our own proper nature, it will not be sufficient. We will not be satisfied. And I think they have that concept when you deal with drug addicts, alcoholics, that they have to reach, I'm a little vague on the English terms, but they have to bottom out, they have to reach the bottom, and then they are suffering so much that they are prepared to change their lives. So some of us do it like that. We're trying to enjoy this material world, and we come to a point of such a high level of frustration that suddenly we become open and we start to pray or reach out. There must be something more in the universe. And then somehow or another, Krishna always manages to touch us at that point. Of course, this philosophy or this structure in life can be applied before we're frustrated. Like if we have family, if we have children, we don't want to send them out and try all the drugs so they shall become so frustrated that they will give up drugs. No, we want to appeal to their higher intelligence. And with Krishna consciousness also, we don't have to become extremely frustrated. We don't have to have a high level of suffering in order to take up Krishna consciousness. We can actually take it up from a point of intelligence, from reading, from understanding, from seeing the examples of great devotees like our Srila Prabhupada. Because the point is the same. At whichever point you apply it in your life, the point is the same. If you don't know your own identity, you cannot make your proper decisions for yourself. So self-realization should always be the most important thing in life. And then when we get some hints, we get some understanding, even if the realization is not fully there, the knowledge is there, and then we can apply that knowledge in a practical sense. And we're not going to say, okay, sense is no more sense enjoyment, no more anything for you. No, when we understand that the soul not only is the soul of a spiritual nature and superior to all these different aspects of the body or the self as such, but it connects to the highest soul, it connects to God, it connects to Krishna. And when that connection is there, then we find satisfaction on the level of the soul, and then naturally all the other levels are automatically included. So if we're looking for some kind of happiness, this is a very practical way of looking for happiness, because then all the levels of happiness are actually included. With intelligence, one has to seek out the constitutional position of the soul and then engage the mind always in Krishna consciousness. That solves the whole problem. A neophyte spiritualist is generally, so the whole problem means it's difficult to control the senses. And if we have that idea, we want to do yoga, not just exercise yoga, but actual yoga, connecting the soul to the supreme spiritual complete whole, then it is sometimes a problem that the senses want to go in a little bit of a different direction than us. The senses may be lazy and not want to focus so much on spiritual life, or the senses may be very active and drawing us in all different directions. Either way, when the soul connects to Krishna in loving service, then we have an actual experience of something that is superior to all of these other levels in life. And the other levels in life are included, because when we serve Krishna, we use our intelligence, we use our mind, and we use our senses also. So there is no loss, there is nothing lacking really. A neophyte spiritualist is generally advised to keep aloof from the objects of the senses. But aside from that, one has to strengthen the mind by use of intelligence. If by intelligence one engages one's mind in Krishna consciousness, by complete surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then automatically the mind becomes stronger. And even though the senses are very strong like serpents, they will be no more effective than serpents with broken fangs. But even though the soul is the master of intelligence and mind, and the senses also, still, unless it is strengthened by association with Krishna in Krishna consciousness, there is every chance of falling down due to the agitated mind. So that's a nice example. If you have a poisonous snake, it's very dangerous. But you see that. I haven't seen it. I have read about it. When you have these snake charmers, they remove the fangs, and then it looks very dangerous, but there's actually no danger. So the senses in Krishna consciousness, they look and act very similar, but since they're always in connection, in service to Krishna, they don't pose a danger on a realized level. Until we come there, Prabhupada is of course pointing out, there is still a chance of getting off track, of getting sidetracked, of getting distracted, of getting drawn away from Krishna consciousness. So especially in the beginning, it is very good to have some kind of structure, so to have some kind of practice in order to really come to realization and train the mind and train the intelligence in that way. So yeah, these are practical instructions. It's sometimes poetic, it's sometimes very deep, but it's not just a form of entertainment. It is something that can be applied practically in our life to elevate our daily life to a spiritual level, and we are all invited. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Tack för att du tittar. Vi hoppas kunna lägga upp nya avsnitt varje tisdag och torsdag. Vi vill jättegärna få frågor och kommentarer där nere. Det finns också lite information och länkar och såklart subscribe-knappen. Tack! Hare Krishna. Vi ses.
I'm a Hare Krishna, and I approve this message. Subscribe.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare